So today we're going to do arrays. So what are arrays? So arrays are a collection of elements of the same data type stored in continuous memory locations. So let's do a simple example of what an array is. So we're going to write our array inside the main function. So we're going to have something like this. We're going to have an int main, and then we're going to have our curly braces. And then inside the main function, we're going to declare an array. So just like declaring a variable, we're going to start by giving our array the type, the data type. So we're going to have int, and then we're going to give it a name. So we can call it array. And then we're going to have square brackets. So inside the square brackets, we're going to have what is known as the size. So inside the square brackets, we have the size. So we can say 5. So that is the size indicates the number of elements that are within the array. So now we're going to put our elements after the equal sign. We're going to have curly braces, and then we're going to have element 1, and then element 2, element 3, element 4, and element 5. So those are the elements inside the array. So when I said the size of the array is 5, we should have 5 elements inside the array. If I put another element inside the array and they are more than 5, then I'm gonna get an error, because I said the size of the array is 5, which means the array must have only 5 elements, nothing less, nothing more. So let's say this is the array that we have. Now let's say we want to print the elements of the array to the screen. So what we do is we just say print f, and then what we can do, we can say, let's say we want to print the second element of the array. So what we can do is that we can say element, the second element 2 is equal to %d. And what is %d? So if we want to print the second element of the array, we're going to write that array over there. So we're going to say the name of the array. So we're going to say array, and then we're going to put square brackets, and then for the second element, we're going to put 1. So let's do this, and then let's say return 0. So let's run this and see what happens. So it prints the second element is equal to 45, but notice that I put 1 inside the square brackets right here. So that is because in arrays, 0 is the first element of the array. So now let's see what happens. Let me just change this to 1. So the first element is equal to, let's run that and see what happens. So element 1 is equal to 1. So let me change that and make it 22. So element 1 is equal to 22. So 0 represents the first element of an array. So let's print the third element. So we're gonna go with 2, and then let's run that and see what happens. The third element, so let me change this and say 3. Element 3 is equal to 67. So this is just the basic introduction to arrays. So now let's use a for loop to represent the array elements. So let's do that. So we're gonna go into the next line, and then we're gonna write for, and then we're gonna have a counter. So we're gonna initialize the counter. So we're gonna have int I, or you can call it whatever you want. So we can just go with I for this time. So in I, we're gonna initialize the counter to 0, and then how many elements do we have? So we have 5. So we're gonna say as long as I is less than 5. And then we're going to say increment the counter. And then we're going to go outside and then do that. And then we're going to say printf. So we're going to say element %d is %d. So now we have to be specific. What do we mean by %d and %d? So let's put a \n right there. So we're gonna go out. So the first %d represents the counter. So we're gonna say I, and then the second %d will be an array. So we're gonna say array, and then that will be the array element, and then we're gonna put I inside. So let's do semicolon over there, and then let's run that and see what happens. So element 0 is equal to 22. So element 0, and remember %d, the first %d represents the counter, and the counter it is initialized to 0. So we're gonna have element 0 is 22, which is the first element. So we're gonna put that 0 into that square brackets, and 0 represents the first element. And then after incrementing the counter, we're gonna have 1. So when we have 1, we're gonna have element 1, which is what we have over there, is, and then we're gonna put that 1 inside the square bracket, and then we're gonna have the second element. Yeah, so this is the introduction. So let's say we want to calculate the sum of the elements within the array. So let's start by declaring an array. So we're gonna have an int, let's say array, so square brackets. So let's say we have 8 elements within the array. So we're gonna have 8, and then we're gonna have equal to curly braces. So let's say we have any numbers. So we have 34, 56, 77, okay, 77, and then 23, 54. So how many do we have now? 2, 4, 6. So 23 again, and 88. So we do have 8, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now we have 8 elements within the array. So we want to add up these elements all together. So what we have to do now is to initialize the sum. So we're going to have int sum, and then we're going to say sum is equal to 0. So we have to loop through the array in order to calculate the sum. So we're going to have to go from element 1, 2, 3 up until the end. So to do this, we're going to use a for loop. So we're going to say for, and then we're going to use counters now. So we're going to have int I. So I, the counter is initialized to 0. And then how many elements do we have? We have 8 elements. So as long as I is less than 8, increment the counter. So we're going to have I plus plus, and then curly braces. So what we're going to have now is the sum. So we're going to add whatever the value that we get to the sum. So we're going to have plus equal to array elements. So we're going to have that. So basically this line means that we have the sum. So initially we have the sum equal to 0, and then when I is equal to 0, we're going to take that I and put it inside the square brackets, and then when and that will be array square bracket 0. So what is that value at 0? That is 34. So we're gonna add that value to the sum that we have now. So that sum is 0. Now we're gonna have 34 plus 0, and that will be our new sum. And then we increment the counter to 1, and then we put that 1 into the square brackets. And now we're gonna move on to the second element, and then now we're gonna have 56 plus the sum that we already have, which is 34, and so forth. So now let's say we want to print the sum to the screen. So we're gonna say printf, and then we're gonna have the sum is percentage %d. So what is percentage %d? That will be the sum. So let's run that and see what happens. So the sum is 362. So that is how you add the array elements. So let's say that you were not given the size of the array. So we're gonna remove that 8 over there, and then we're gonna remove this 8 right here. So you're not given the size of the array. So, and we have to calculate the size. So it is possible that you may not be given the size of the array and you have to find it yourself. So what we have to do now is to say int size, and then we're gonna say that is equal to, you're gonna have size of, and then inside the brackets, so we're gonna have the name of the array. So we're gonna have array, and then we're gonna have divided by size of, and then we're gonna have the array. So you're gonna have something like this, array, and then square brackets, and then we're gonna have 0 there. So this line is used to calculate the size of the array. Take note, this line over here is used to calculate the size of the array. So we're gonna go back here as long as I is less than the size. So let's run that and see what happens. The sum is 362, just like before. So if you're not given the size over there, so you have to calculate the size using this line. So this line is used to calculate the size of the array. So let's add more numbers to the array. So we're gonna have 33, and then let's add more 12, let's add more 88, 9. So let's see what happens. And that is the new sum that we get. So just a note, use this line to calculate the size of the array.